The Thanksgiving dinner conversation had taken its predictable turn toward career assessments. And, just like every year, I found myself in the crosshairs of family judgment. At 31, I was still the disappointment, the one who had never lived up to her potential, according to the annual performance reviews disguised as holiday gatherings. Maya still works at that little café downtown, my sister Jennifer announced to the assembled relatives. Her voice carried that particular tone of pity mixed with superiority that she had perfected over the years. You know, the one with the mismatched chairs and the chipped coffee cups. Very bohemian. Our cousin David, fresh from his latest promotion at his accounting firm, shook his head sympathetically. That's rough, Maya. Have you thought about going back to school? Maybe getting into something more stable? I could talk to my firm about entry-level positions. I continued slicing the turkey, my movements calm and practiced. That's very kind of you, David. I appreciate the offer. She's been saying she'll figure things out for 10 years now, Jennifer continued, warming to her subject. Remember when she graduated? We all thought she'd be running some big company by now with that business degree. Instead, she's asking people if they want fries with that. Mom reached over and patted my hand. Honey, there's nothing wrong with honest work. But Jennifer does have a point about your potential. You were always so smart in school. The weight of their collective concern pressed down on the dining room like a heavy blanket. Uncle Robert, who ran a small insurance agency, cleared his throat importantly. The service industry is fine for young people, but at some point you need to think about your future. Benefits, retirement planning, career advancement. These things matter. Maya doesn't think that far ahead, Jennifer said, cutting her turkey with surgical precision. She's always been the dreamer in the family. Remember her college plans? She was going to change the world, start her own business, make millions. She laughed, but not unkindly. We all have those phases. I refilled water glasses around the table, moving with the practiced efficiency that comes from years of actually working in food service. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was literally serving them while they discussed my serving career. But I kept my expression neutral. I worry about her, Dad said quietly. 31 and still living paycheck to paycheck. When I was her age, I had a house, 2 kids, and a pension plan. Different times, Dad, I said softly. The economy is not the same. The economy is fine if you have marketable skills, Jennifer countered. Look at Tom. She gestured toward her husband, who was busy explaining cryptocurrency to anyone who would listen. He pivoted into tech consulting 3 years ago. Now he's pulling in 6 figures. Tom nodded enthusiastically. It's all about adapting, Maya. The old ways of doing business are dead. You need to think disruptively, embrace innovation, leverage synergies. He paused to sip his wine. Have you considered coding boot camps? I know guys who went from zero to software developer in 12 weeks. Maya's not really the tech type, Jennifer said protectively. She's more people-oriented, customer service, hospitality, that sort of thing. She's actually very good with difficult customers. I've seen her handle some real jerks at that cafe. The backhanded compliments kept flowing like wine, each one delivered with genuine affection and concern. They loved me, I knew that. They were worried about me, and in their minds they had every right to be. From their perspective, I was the family underachiever. The cautionary tale. The reminder that talent without direction leads nowhere. Grandma Chin, who had been quietly eating and observing, finally spoke up. In my day you picked a job and stuck with it. All this jumping around trying to find yourself. It's nonsense. Maya needs to pick something practical and commit. Exactly, Uncle Robert said. Security, stability, a clear path forward. That's what builds a life. The conversation shifted to Jennifer's recent promotion to regional sales manager. And I found myself in the familiar position of family audience, listening to success stories while my own life was held up as the counterexample. Jennifer had always been the golden child. Straight A's, perfect college trajectory, corporate ladder climbing with military precision. The thing about sales, Jennifer was explaining, is that it's not just about the product. It's about relationships, trust, understanding what people really need. I've doubled my territory's revenue in 18 months because I focus on long-term client development, not just quick wins. That's the kind of strategic thinking Maya needs to develop, Mom said, beaming at Jennifer with obvious pride. Real business acumen. I stood to clear the first course, stacking plates with the muscle memory that comes from thousands of restaurant shifts. As I moved around the table, fragments of conversation followed me like background music. Maya was always the creative one, Aunt Linda was saying. Remember those stories she used to write? Maybe she should try freelance writing, blogging, something like that. Creative doesn't pay the bills, Uncle Robert replied pragmatically. She needs something with a steady paycheck and benefits. In the kitchen, I scraped plates and loaded the dishwasher with methodical efficiency. Through the doorway, I could hear Jennifer launching into her 5-year plan, complete with target income goals and professional development benchmarks. She'd always been good at presentations. When I returned with the main course, the conversation had evolved into general career advice with me as the implicit case study. The key is specialization, Tom was saying. Pick a niche, become the expert, then monetize that expertise. Look at Gary Vaynerchuk, Pat Flynn, Tim Ferriss. They all started with specific knowledge areas and built empires around them. Maya's problem is she's a generalist, Jennifer observed. Good at lots of things, not exceptional at any one thing. That doesn't translate well in today's market. David nodded sagely. Employers want deep expertise, not broad competence. Maya needs to pick a lane and dominate it. I served the roasted vegetables, accepting their analysis of my shortcomings with the grace I'd learned from years of customer service. Fell nod. Don't take it personally. Keep moving forward. These were survival skills that translated surprisingly well from restaurants to family dinners. Have you thought about going back to school? Cousin Sarah asked. Maybe an MBA. I know it's expensive, but it could open doors. More debt probably isn't the answer, Mom said practically. She needs something that pays off quickly. Trade school, Uncle Robert suggested. Plumbing, electrical work, HVAC. Those guys make good money and there's always demand. The suggestions kept coming, each one well-intentioned and completely missing the mark. I appreciated their concern. Truly I did. But listening to them plan my future felt like watching strangers discuss a movie I'd already seen. They were operating with incomplete information, drawing conclusions from limited data, making assumptions that seemed logical from their perspective but were fundamentally flawed. The important thing is to start somewhere, Jennifer said, reaching for my hand with genuine sisterly affection. Even small steps forward are better than staying stuck. And you're not getting any younger, Maya. Time doesn't wait for perfect plans. I squeezed her hand back, touched by the sincerity in her voice despite the sting of her words. You're right. Change is important. Maybe after the holidays we could sit down and really map out some options, she continued. I could introduce you to some people in my network, see if anything resonates. Sometimes it's just about getting in front of the right opportunities. Dessert arrived with more career counseling. Grandma Chin shared stories of relatives who had made something of themselves through determination and practical choices. Tom offered to review my resume and suggest improvements. David promised to keep his ears open for entry-level positions that might suit my skill set. It was during the coffee service that my phone began buzzing insistently in my pocket. I had set it to silent for dinner, but whoever was calling wasn't giving up. After the fourth call in 2 minutes, I excused myself to check the messages. Sorry, I should probably take this, I said, stepping toward the kitchen. It might be work-related, Jennifer said to the table. See? Even on Thanksgiving, the service industry never stops. No boundaries, no respect for personal time. That's exactly what I'm talking about, Uncle Robert agreed. In the kitchen, I looked at my phone screen. 7 missed calls from James Morrison, the journalist who had been working on the Forbes article for 3 months. I called him back, keeping my voice low. James, sorry I missed your calls. I'm at family dinner. Maya, thank God. Listen, I know it's a holiday, but we need to confirm your interview slot for tomorrow. The CEO of the Year issue is going to print on Monday, and we're doing final photo shoots this weekend. Can you be at the Manhattan studio by 10 a.m.? I glanced toward the dining room, where my family was undoubtedly continuing their analysis of my life choices. Yes, that works fine. Perfect. And congratulations again on the recognition. When the Forbes board reviewed this year's candidates, your company's growth trajectory was just phenomenal. Bootstrapping from a single café to a 60-location chain in 5 years, all while maintaining sustainability standards and worker equity programs. That's the kind of story our readers love. I appreciate that, James. I'll see you tomorrow. I hung up and stood in the kitchen for a moment, listening to the voices from the dining room. They had moved on to holiday shopping plans, apparently having exhausted the topic of my career deficiencies. I could slip back in and continue playing the role they'd assigned me, or I could let the natural flow of conversation bring what was inevitably coming. When I returned to the table, Jennifer was in the middle of explaining her Christmas budget strategy. It's all about planning ahead and setting realistic expectations. Impulse purchases are what kill most people's holiday finances. I refilled coffee cups and settled back into my chair waiting. The call had been loud enough that someone might have caught fragments of it, and I knew it was only a matter of time before curiosity got the better of them. It was Tom who bit first. "Work emergency?" he asked with the practiced sympathy of someone who had fielded his share of holiday interruptions. "Just confirming some scheduling for tomorrow," I said. "You're working on Black Friday?" Mom asked with concern. "Honey, that's one of the busiest shopping days of the year. You'll be exhausted." "It's not exactly work," I said carefully. "More like a meeting." Jennifer's eyebrows rose slightly. She'd always been good at reading between the lines. "What kind of meeting?" "A job interview." The table's attention shifted toward me with the subtle intensity of a family sensing developing news. I could feel their collective hope, that maybe finally Maya was taking some initiative in fixing her life. "Something like that," I said. "That's wonderful," Mom exclaimed. "What kind of position?" "Corporate management." I took a sip of coffee, buying time. The moment was approaching faster than I'd expected, and I wasn't sure I was ready for the aftermath. For 5 years I'd maintained the careful fiction that let them see what they expected to see. It hadn't been malicious. More like a protective camouflage that allowed family gatherings to proceed without the complications that truth sometimes brings. "It's in the food service industry," I said, which was technically accurate. The slight deflation around the table was palpable but polite. They were trying so hard to be supportive, even when I seemed to confirm their worst fears about my lack of ambition. "Well, that's your area of expertise," Jennifer said with determined positivity. "Maybe management level. Shift supervisor. That could be a good stepping stone to bigger things." "Something like that," I repeated. Uncle Robert cleared his throat. "The important thing is upward mobility. Make sure this position has advancement opportunities. You don't want to get stuck in another dead-end situation." My phone buzzed again, a text this time from my assistant. "Media interviews scheduled for 2 p.m. Saturday. Wall Street Journal, Bloomberg, and TechCrunch confirmed. Should I push the acquisition meeting to next week?" I typed back quickly. "Push the meeting. Keep the media schedule." When I looked up, Jennifer was watching me with increased curiosity. "Busy day tomorrow," she said. "Seems like it." The conversation moved on to other topics, but I caught Jennifer shooting me occasional glances throughout the remainder of dinner. She'd always been perceptive, and something in my demeanor was pinging her radar. I made a mental note to be more careful. It was during the final cleanup that my phone rang again. This time, James Morrison's call came through the dining room speakers as I was putting away leftovers. My phone was still synced to the sound system I'd helped Dad set up last Christmas. "Maya, one more quick thing about tomorrow," James's voice filled the room. "The photographer wants to do some shots at your flagship location, the original café where it all started. Can we get access around noon?" The kitchen went completely silent. Every family member in earshot froze mid-motion, trying to process what they had just heard. "That should be fine," I said, moving quickly to disconnect the call, but it was too late. "Also," James continued, oblivious to my audience, "the Forbes social media team wants to coordinate the announcement of your CEO of the Year recognition with your company's channels. Should they reach out to your marketing director directly, or do you prefer to handle media coordination personally?" I managed to end the call and turned to face a kitchen full of relatives staring at me with expressions ranging from confusion to shock. Jennifer spoke first, her voice carefully controlled. "Why don't you tell us exactly what is happening tomorrow?" The moment had arrived. 5 years of careful misdirection, letting them see the server instead of the CEO. Maintaining the comfortable fiction that kept family dynamics simple and predictable. I set down the dish towel I'd been holding and looked around at their faces. "I have a Forbes interview tomorrow for their CEO of the Year recognition." The silence stretched for several long seconds. Tom was the first to break it. "Forbes as in Forbes magazine?" "Yes." "CEO of the Year?" Jennifer's voice was barely above a whisper. Yes. Uncle Robert sat down heavily in the nearest chair. Maya, what company do you run? Chin Hospitality Group. We operate 63 sustainable café locations across 11 states, with revenue last year of just over $400 million. The kitchen remained silent as they processed this information. I could see the mental calculations happening, the rapid reassessment of everything they thought they knew about my life. Mom found her voice first. The little cafe downtown, that's yours? It's where I started. Yes. The company has grown since then. Grown how much? David asked quietly. We're valued at approximately $1.2 billion. I own 78% of it. Jennifer leaned against the counter as if she needed the support. Maya, are you telling us you're a billionaire? On paper, yes. The questions came in a rush after that. How long had this been going on? Why hadn't I told them? What exactly did my company do? How had they missed something this significant? I answered as best I could, explaining the timeline, the business model, the deliberate choice to maintain a low profile. I told them about the sustainable sourcing initiatives, the profit-sharing programs for employees, the expansion strategy that had taken a single cafe and turned it into a regional powerhouse. But you still work at that little place downtown, Mom said, struggling to reconcile the information. I see you there when I drive by. I do spend time there, yes. It's important to stay connected to ground-level operations. But I'm not exactly working as a server anymore. Tom was running calculations on his phone. Maya, if these numbers are right, you're worth more than everyone in this room combined, by a factor of a lot. Family dinner had transformed into something between an interrogation and a celebration, with everyone trying to process the magnitude of what they'd just learned. Questions about my business mixed with apologies for earlier comments. Amazement at my success blended with confusion about my secrecy. It was Jennifer who finally asked the question I'd been expecting. Why didn't you tell us? All these years, all these conversations about your career and your future. Why let us think you were struggling? I considered how to answer. The truth was complicated. Family dynamics, personal choice, and the strange comfort of being underestimated. It was easier, I said finally. Family relationships can get complicated when money becomes part of the equation. I liked that you loved me just as Maya, not as Maya, this Maya. We would have been proud of you, Dad said quietly. We are proud of you. I know. But pride can change things too. I wanted to build something substantial before letting success change how we related to each other. The evening transformed after that. The same people who had been offering career advice an hour earlier were now asking for business insights. The conversation shifted from concern about my future to curiosity about my strategies, from worry about my stability to amazement at my achievements. But the most meaningful moment came when Jennifer pulled me aside as the evening wound down. I owe you an apology, she said. Not just for tonight but for years of assuming I knew what your life looked like. You don't owe me anything, I said. You were being a good sister looking out for me. I was being condescending, she said firmly. There's a difference. I thought I understood your choices, your capabilities, your potential. I was completely wrong. We hugged then and I felt something shift in our relationship. The dynamic that had defined us for decades, successful Jennifer and struggling Maya, was being replaced by something more complex and honest. The Forbes article would come out on Monday along with the interview and photo spread that would make my business success public knowledge. But the real revelation had happened around a family dinner table, over turkey and wine, and the gradual understanding that people are rarely exactly what they appear to be. As I drove home that night, I reflected on the transformation. For 5 years I had been living a double life of sorts, billionaire CEO by day, underachieving family member by weekend. It had been sustainable until it wasn't. Protective until it became limiting. Simple until it became complicated. The truth has a way of surfacing eventually. And tonight it had emerged not through any grand gesture or dramatic reveal, but through the ordinary intrusion of business calls into family time. Sometimes the most significant changes happen in the most mundane moments. A phone call during dinner, a journalist's voice over speakers, a conversation that suddenly veers into unexpected territory. Tomorrow would bring the Forbes interview, the photo shoots, the media attention that would make my success officially public. But tonight had brought something more valuable, the restoration of honesty in my most important relationships, and the relief of no longer managing two separate versions of the same life. The family dynamics would continue evolving, adapting to this new information about who I actually was and what I had actually built. But that evolution would happen authentically, grounded in truth rather than assumption, reality rather than perception. And perhaps most importantly, I'd learned that the people who love you will find a way to love the truth of you, even when that truth reshapes everything they thought they knew about your life.